In this IGCSE CIE video, I'm going to be answering a chemistry past paper from 2017, and it's the multiple choice one. So we'll be going through every single question and I'll be talking you through my explanation. Which statement about liquids and gases is correct? 1 centimetres cubed of gas contains more particles than 1 centimetres cubed of liquid. Now A is incorrect, obviously, because we know that the particles are further apart in a gas, and so there's no way that 1 centimetres cubed of a gas will contain more particles. It will be less. A given mass of liquid has a fixed volume at room temperature. Yeah, we know that this is true, but we're just going to check C and D to make sure that they're incorrect. Particles in a liquid can easily be forced closer together. No, that's incorrect, because liquids, remember, are incompressible. Particles in a liquid have fixed positions. No, that's true of solids, not liquids. So the answer here is B. Which method is used to obtain copper 2-sulfate crystals from an aqueous solution of copper 2-sulfate? Well, if we have an aqueous solution, effectively we want to get rid of the water. So how do we do that? Well, we heat it in order to evaporate. And so therefore the answer here is C. 25 centimetres cubed of an alkali are added to 20 centimetres cubed of an acid. The temperature change is measured, which apparatus is not needed in the experiment. So we've mentioned volumes here. We know we're after temperature, so we'll need a thermometer. So looking down at the list of equipment, what don't we need? Well, we definitely need the measuring cylinder. We're adding the two volumes together, so we'll most likely need a beaker. A balance we won't need, because there's nothing about measuring a particular mass. And a thermometer, I've already mentioned that we need. So what don't we need? Well, we don't need the balance. A sample of liquid X turns blue cobalt to chloride paper pink. The sample boils at 102 degrees Celsius. What statements are correct? Okay, so we know it's water due to this chemical test, proving that it is. Now the boiling point of water when it's pure is 100 degrees Celsius exactly. So we know that we have an impure source of water. So yes, it does contain water due to the cobalt chloride paper turning pink. I've said that it's impure. Does X freeze above 0 degrees Celsius? Well, we don't know this. It hasn't given us enough information, so we can't be sure about that one. So our answer is 1 and 2 only, which is B. Substance Y is added to an excess of hot water. A blue solution forms and a brown solid remains. The brown solid is filtered off and dried. The brown solid conducts electricity. What is Y? Now we know that we have a mixture because we have both the blue solution and a brown solid. The fact that it conducts electricity means that it's most likely to be a metal. So which of options A, B, C and D most closely agrees with this? Well, it's B. Y is a mixture which contains a metal. Which row gives the number of protons, electrons and neutrons found in an atom of zinc? You're going to have to use your periodic table to do this. Now it has a mass of 65, so an atomic mass of 65, its atomic number, its proton number is 30. So let's write out what we know. Well, we know that the atomic number is the same as the proton number, so we know that its proton number is 30. Remember, neutral atoms of elements have equal numbers of protons and electrons, so that's also going to be 30. And the neutron number is calculated by taking the atomic number away from the mass number, so that's 35. So which row agrees with that? Well, it's A. 4 statements about atoms and ions are shown. And so we're going to be asked which of these statements is true, so we'll need a periodic table and we'll need to go through them one by one, marking them off. Fluoride ion has more electrons than a sodium ion. So if fluoride ion has 10 electrons, I'm using the periodic table to help me with this. The sodium ion also has 10 electrons, so that's not true. Mg2 plus has the same number of electrons as sodium ions, so that's 10 electrons again. Let's check the periodic table. If it's Mg2 plus, it's lost 2 electrons, so it's 10 electrons, so that is true. The sodium ion, again, 10 electrons, has more electrons than lithium. Well, that's true. Lithium has 4 electrons. An atom of phosphorus has more outer shell electrons than an atom of nitrogen. Now remember, when we're looking at outer shell electrons, we're looking at the group that they're in. They're both in group 5, which means they have the same number of electrons in the outer shell, so that's false. So where have I put ticks against 2 and 3, which is C? So the answer here is 7C. The diagrams X, Y, and Z show part of a polymer and 2 giant covalent structures, X, Y, and Z. Which of X, Y, and Z could be used as a cutting tool? Which of X, Y, and Z could be used to reduce friction? Okay, hopefully you recognise immediately that Y is diamond, Z is graphite. You need to learn these pictures and know which structure they represent. So cutting tool, remember that's extremely hard, and we use diamond for that. So our cutting tool is therefore Y. In terms of reducing friction, we need a lubricant. Well, graphite is used as a lubricant, so our reducing friction structure is Z. So we're looking for Y followed by Z, which is B, 8B. A compound with the formula XO2 has a relative formula mass of 64. What is X? Well, let's check the atomic mass of oxygen on the periodic table. It's 16. We know we need to multiply it by 2, so that's 32. Work out the difference between 64 and 32. Well, that's 32. Have a look in a periodic table. Find out which element has an atomic mass of 32, and you'll see that that is sulfur. The electrolysis of concentrated hydrochloric acid using platinum electrodes is shown. What is observed at each electrode at the start of the electrolysis? Now remember, when we electrolyze hydrochloric acid, we're going to produce a halogen, which is chlorine gas, at the anode, which is the positive electrode, and then at the negative electrode, so the cathode, remember we're going to be producing hydrogen gas, which is colourless, and so therefore C is our answer. 2 chemical processes are described. During the combustion of kerosene, energy is, remember that combustion is an exothermic reaction, which means that energy is given out. During the electrolysis of hydrochloric acid, energy is taken in. So what matches with that? Well, it's B. Given out, taken in. Which reaction is endothermic? Neutralization of an acid by an alkaline? No, that is exothermic. We must learn which reactions are endothermic and exothermic. Reaction of hydrogen with oxygen? No, again, that is not endothermic. The same is true for the reaction of sodium with water. Thermal decomposition of limestone? Well, here you're taking in heat energy, obviously, because you're needing the heat in order to decompose the limestone. So that's why D is the answer. The mass of a beaker and its contents is plotted against time. Which graph represents what happens when sodium carbonate reacts with an excess of dilute hydrochloric acid in an open beaker? So we've got sodium carbonate reacting with hydrochloric acid, forming sodium chloride plus water plus carbon dioxide. Now the fact that it's an open beaker means that the carbon dioxide is going to be given off, so the mass will decrease over time. Remember that reactions start off quickly and then slow down. So that's what we can see with this graph line. So B is your answer here. When blue copper 2 sulfate is heated, a white solid and water are formed. The white solid turns blue and gives out heat when water is added to it. Which terms describe the blue copper 2 sulfate and the reactions? Now the blue copper sulfate, when it's heated, means that water is being driven off, so it must mean that originally it was hydrated. It contained water. Now notice you can actually bring back that blue copper sulfate. You can actually reverse this reaction, so therefore the answer here is C. The equation for the reaction between magnesium and hydrochloric acid is shown. The rate of this reaction is studied using the apparatus shown. What change increases the rate of reaction? Lowering the temperature of the acid? No, absolutely not. That would decrease the rate of reaction. Using a larger volume of the same hydrochloric acid? No, you've not really done anything. Remember, you have to change the concentration in order to change the rate of reaction. Using less concentrated hydrochloric acid? No, again, that would reduce the rate of reaction. Using the same mass of magnesium powder? Perfect. We've swapped our ribbon for our powder, which means we've increased the surface area. And remember, increasing the surface area increases the rate of reaction, so D is the answer here. The equations for 2 reactions P and Q are given. In which of these reactions does oxidation of the underlying substance occur? So effectively we're trying to add oxygen to the substance. We can see that it has been added in P, and in the second reaction Q it's been lost, so oxidation has not occurred here. B therefore is the answer. What is not a typical characteristic of acids? They react with alkalis producing water. This is very true. They react with all metals producing hydrogen. No, that's not true. You can't say all metals. Metals less reactive than hydrogen do not react with acids. Check C, they react with carbonates producing carbon dioxide. That's very true. And yes, they turn blue litmus paper red, so the answer here is B. Which oxide produces a solution with a pH between 1 and 7 when reacted with water? So we're looking for an acidic oxide, which remember are the non-metals. And actually the only non-metal here is this carbon here. Everything else I've underlined is a metal, so 18B is the answer by default. 3 solids, P, Q and R, all react with dilute sulfuric acid to produce zinc sulfate. P and R produce gases during the reaction. The gas produced when P reacts will not burn. The gas produced when R reacts will burn. What are P, Q and R? Well, we know for sure that they are zinc. So we know that because the gas produced when P reacts doesn't burn, that gas is likely to be carbon dioxide, which remember does not support combustion. So P must be zinc carbonate, as I've underlined. The gas produced when R reacts will burn, so that gas is likely to be hydrogen. What produces hydrogen? Well, it's zinc reacting with sulfuric acid by itself. And therefore, by default, we can see the only one that has been underlined twice is C, so answer here is 19C. Which ion forms a green precipitate with aqueous sodium hydroxide that dissolves in an excess of sodium hydroxide? Now this is simply something you'll have to learn off by heart. The green precipitate produced when reacted with sodium hydroxide, which then dissolves in excess aqueous sodium hydroxide, is chromium, so your answer here is B. 21. A period of the periodic table is shown. The letters are not their chemical symbol. Which statement is correct? So remember that groups 1 to 4 are metals, 5 to 8 are non-metals. So let's try and remember their generic properties. So which statement is correct? Element R does not conduct electricity. Well, that's false because it's a metal, so it will conduct electricity. Elements R and Y react together to form an ionic compound. Well, let's take a group 7 element, something like chlorine, reacting with a group 1 element, something like sodium. Sodium chloride is an ionic compound, so that's actually true. Element Z exists as a diatomic molecule. No, Z is a noble gas. Remember, these are monoatomic. That's false. Element Z reacts with element T. Well, they're very unreactive group 8 elements as well, so that would not be true either. So that means that the answer here is B. 22. Some properties of element X are shown. So we have a melting point of 98 degrees, a boiling point which is pretty high of 883 degrees, reacts with cold water to give off hydrogen gas, and it burns an oxygen to form a white solid. In which part of the periodic table is element X found? Well, it's not going to be group 7 or 8 because these are non-metals. They mostly exist as gases at room temperature, so that wouldn't be correct. Now, transition metals have much higher boiling points and melting points than the ones given here, which are relatively low. So that means it must be a group 1 element, an alkaline metal, because remember they have quite low melting points for metals. The table gives some properties of an element. Which other property would you expect this element to have? So it has a high melting point, it's grey at room temperature, has a dark blue chloride, it has good electrical conductivity when solid. So I'm thinking that this is a transition metal, which remember they have coloured compounds and they can act as catalysts. So 23A. Metals are not brittle. Metals form basic oxides, and most metals aren't very reactive with water. The exception here is obviously group 1 metals, but we know it's not a group 1 metal because this metal has a much higher melting point than I would expect of a group 1, which is why I believe that 23A is the answer. Why is argon gas used to fill electric lamps? Well, remember it's in group 8, it's very unreactive, so that's why D is the answer here. What is the property of all metals? They conduct electricity. Yeah, they all do due to delocalized electrons. The crucial word here, by the way, is all. They're not all hard. The exception here is group 1 metals, which are soft. They have low melting points. Well, that's kind of false. They have a mixture. Some have very high, some have fairly low. Do they all react with water? No, they don't. That's untrue as well. So that's why A is the answer. What is the reducing agent in the large-scale extraction of iron from iron ore? You've got to learn this. It's carbon monoxide, so that's B. Some reactions of 3 metals are listed in the table. What is the order of reactivity of the metals? Now, this relies on you knowing that carbon appears higher up in the reactivity series than hydrogen. So that means that if it doesn't react with hydrochloric acid, then we're looking at a very unreactive element. So that means that R is the least reactive. Now, if it isn't reduced by carbon, then that means it must be more reactive than carbon. So it must be the highest in the reactivity. So I'm thinking P is the most reactive or has high reactivity. So it's actually going 1, 2, 3. So we're going PQR, so 27A. Which uses of the metals shown are both correct? Aluminium used as aircraft bodies, yes. Stainless steel used as car bodies, no. That would be a crazy expensive thing to do. And as I actually look down, stainless steel would be far too heavy to be used as aircraft bodies. I'm not sure about aluminium. I say no, that's probably too soft. I'm going to say no again to it being a chemical plant. Stainless steel is not used for food containers. However, aluminium is used for food containers, and stainless steel makes great cutlery because it's not corrosive, so 28D is the answer. So there are still questions where I'm not completely sure, but if I use my common sense, I can infer the correct answer. The flow chart shows stages in the treatment of river water to produce drinking water. So we've got river water going into the settling tank, having stage X, stage Y, and then drinking water. What occurs at stage X and Y? Well, we need to remove solids first of all, so we need to filter. And then stage Y, we need to remove pathogens by adding chlorine. And so I can see, therefore, that the answer here is C. What is produced by the incomplete combustion of methane? Crucially, you produce carbon monoxide when you do incomplete combustion. If it had been complete combustion, then you would have produced carbon dioxide. But the answer here is 30A. Iron is a metal that rusts in the presence of oxygen and water. Mild steel is used for something and is prevented from rusting by something. Stainless steel does not rust, it is produced by something, iron with another metal. Which words complete gaps 1, 2 and 3? So what makes sense? Mild steel is used for, it's true, it's car bodies, so we're looking at A and B here. And is prevented from rusting by largely painting. And then let's just make sure that mixing makes sense for number 3. Stainless steel does not rust, it's produced by mixing iron with another metal. Yep, that does make sense, so the answer here is 31B. Compound Q is heated with aqueous sodium hydroxide. The damp red litmus paper turns blue, so what is Q? Well, if it's turning blue, it must be an alkali substance, which means it is ammonium chloride A. Notice that everything else is a metal chloride, so really if you were looking for the odd one out, you'd know it was A anyway. 33. Some marble chips, calcium carbonate, are heated strongly and substances X and Y are formed. We know that's calcium oxide and carbon dioxide. Substance X is a white solid which reacts with water giving out heat, so that's making me think it's calcium oxide. Substance Y is a colourless gas, carbon dioxide. What are the substances X and Y? Well, luckily I've already worked that out. I've already said that X is calcium oxide and I said that Y is carbon dioxide, so it's nice and easy for me to pick out the answer as being C. The structure of compound R is shown. What is R? Let's count the number of carbons. 1, 2, 3, so we know it begins with prop. It's an alcohol, so it's propanol. 34C. Fuel oil and naphtha, 2 fractions obtained from petroleum. What are major uses of these fractions? Now, fuel oil, you've just got to learn this, it's a ship fuel. So either C or D is the right answer. Naphtha is used to make chemicals, so the answer here is C. What are the products of the complete combustion of ethanol? Learn this off by heart. It's carbon dioxide and water. Make sure you read that the answers correctly, and that's D. X, Y, and Z are 3 hydrocarbons. What do X, Y, and Z have in common? So let's notice they're all alkenes. I can see that due to the fact that they all have that C double bond C. They're all part of the same homologous series. Yes, they are. They're all alkenes. They all have the same boiling point. No, remember that members of the same homologous series show a trend in boiling points. They don't have the same boiling points, which means that 1 and 2 are correct only. So 37B. The table shows bonds that are present and bonds that are not present in compound X. What type of compound is X? So it's definitely not an alkene. Now, could it be a carboxylic acid? Remember, this is the functional group of a carboxylic acid. Yeah, these are all present. There's ticks against all of these. Now, it's not an alcohol because it has C double bond O present. Now, it's not an alkane because it has lots of extra functional groups present, not just your C bond C. And it's definitely not an alkene. I've already said that over here. So it's A. The diagram shows a reaction sequence. Butane going to ethene, ethanol, carbon dioxide and water. Which row names the processes X, Y and Z? So if we're going from a longer chain to a shorter chain, then we definitely have cracking as X. Now if we're adding water to an alkene, then we're making an alcohol, and therefore we're having hydration. And then if we're burning it to produce carbon dioxide and water, then we're combusting. So which row shows these 3 in order? It's B. Last up, molecules of a substance react together as shown. Now notice we've got 3 small molecules joining together to form a large molecule. So here's a monomer, 3 monomers of ethene forming together to form polyethene, which is a polymer, and therefore we have polymerization taking place, which is C.